I was talking to a client of ours, and he was on a program of ours. It was very light SEO, mostly on-page, just on-page SEO. And he was telling me they were all excited because they got a client that found them in ChatGPT. The client told them, we found you in ChatGPT. We searched in ChatGPT and we found you. And I was kind of surprised because that wasn't a goal of ours. Our goal was to create content on the website that made sense for Google to digest it and then rank it.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zengage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. All right, we are back with another episode of Home Care Hindsight from Zengage, brought to you by the leading home care engagement platform for your caregivers. Joined by Jeremy Fuller from Grow Senior Care Marketing. Jeremy, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Well, for people who are not familiar with you, how would you introduce yourself?
Well, Jeremy Fuller, and I've been doing digital marketing for about 23 years. I have a few startups. I have a wife, 2 kids, and what I love is digital marketing. I love looking at data, and I love making decisions based on data to move companies and businesses to the next level. So we've been working in home care for about 8 years specifically, and just that's all we do, digital marketing wise. And we've recently partnered with one of our clients out of Wichita to start a home care agency here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So we're super excited about that too.
Very cool. You are tapped into, I think, one of the areas that people feel like is most mystical to their company. And so it's good to have somebody on who says, yeah, I love looking at all that stuff and digging down into the weeds of data on people's search engine optimization or pay-per-click advertising or any of that kind of stuff, because I think for people like me, that is both scary and also boring. Tell me a little bit more about kind of the process of auditing and checking out your friends, your business partner's business yesterday. Did you have any kind of like big learnings or aha moments or opportunities that you identified when you were kind of, going through and documenting everything that happens at a home care agency in a day?
Yeah, it was wild. I've been doing digital marketing for home care specifically for about 8 years. So I thought, I have a decent grasp from start to finish how things work. I talk with about 2 to 3 home care agencies a day. I know you do a lot of conversations and there's different things that come up. But being there, I was able to sit down, and there's 2 reasons why I was out there at my business partner's location. Was one, we're opening up our location over here in Tulsa. So what part of our side are we going to do here? Boots on the ground. His team's going to take care of all the care management, scheduling, billing, some of like the back end office stuff over there, because it makes sense. That's what they're good at. I'm going to do what I'm good at, marketing, right? Digital marketing. And then my wife's going to do some in-person marketing, the face-to-face stuff. So sitting down, I did learn some things that I thought I knew, but I was like, oh, this is a lot more involved. And one of those things is compliance. Dear Lord. Woo! There's a lot of steps on that. And so the second goal was, I have a technology background, going to visit him. What are they doing that maybe technology could come and make something faster to free up their team members' time to actually do something more higher value? So, going off the book of Buy Back Your Time, right? From Dan Martell. It's a great book. I love that book. Doing an audit of what you're doing as an owner, but what is your team doing? Can they, move into strategy roles, right? Stuff like that. So I think that was super impactful too, just to sit down and say, hey, where can automation play a part? Where does too much automation won't make sense. So I found some things. I can pull up my notes if you want. But, one of those things is basically taking a caregiver that comes in through the website or from Google and automating a lot of that nurturing and then reducing the no-shows. I thought that problem kind of ceased to exist, but apparently it's still there for a lot of home care agencies, and they're spending a lot of money on Indeed And I was kind of surprised by that. And so they weren't utilizing some of the free tactics so they can drop Indeed. Another thing is their team was sending people back to Indeed. So they would call on the phone from the website and say, hey, I'm looking for a job. And they didn't have a standardized SOP that, because there's different people that will answer the phone, and sometimes there's home care agencies, not the same person every time. So there wasn't like a standardized process that, hey, somebody's calling and they're a caregiver looking for a job on the phone. Well, take that caregiver that called on the phone and book them for a job interview right there.
Right.
Instead, what they were doing, they were saying, hey, can you go to Indeed and fill out an application? Well, now they might be paying again, because they paid for SEO, they paid for Google Ads to get that caregiver. They might be paying again on Indeed for them to fill out an app. And that is if the caregiver can figure out where to go. Right. So at the end of the day, that was kind of eye-opening, is that at one point we trained them. They were sending people and booking them right there on the phone call. And then they started drifting from SOP, because different team members come in, they start kind of doing their own thing. So that was very eye-opening too.
Yeah. I want to do this next part of the show, which is where I ask, what kind of person are you? And you were telling me about something that you've made a part of your business that's really meaningful to you and that's kind of unique. And so talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So, I'm a believer. I love God. I don't throw it in anybody's face or anything or make them, somebody's uncomfortable. But whenever somebody does like an ultimate home care marketing session where we, audit their digital ads, their SEO positions, at the end, I like to make an opportunity, because I know I'm called to the ministry sometime in the future. I don't know what I'll do, pastor, whatever, I don't know. But I do ask them if they need prayer. And some people say, no, that's cool. That's fine. That's, not a big deal. But a lot of people say absolutely. And sometimes people will start crying, or they'll, like that prayer really touched me. And then some other people will just have a huge smile on their face after, and they'll say, I needed that prayer, So for me, that really brings more to the story of what we do as a company, where we help people grow their business. It makes me feel more purposeful in what I do.
Yeah. Well, that's great. I brought you on the show. You've been doing digital marketing in home care for 8 years. You've had a lot of success. You've helped a lot of clients grow their business. We're not going to talk about any of that. Instead, I bring people on this show to ask them about the big mistake that they've made in their career and how that changed the way that they think about their business. So, Jeremy, what's your big mistake?
Okay. I feel like I've made a lot of mistakes, right? But one mistake is, I was working with a home care client, and there's automation. You can do stuff with like automation, like, okay, a caregiver clicks this or doesn't open an email or doesn't respond after a certain duration of time to a text message. Now do this, right? Or if this, then that. All kinds of different automations, right? Or let's say they uploaded their driver's license, and so now the next step happens where we ask them for their insurance or whatever, right? I think over automating was probably a mistake. Just knowing that there's some things that human beings are faster or better at.
Yeah. I think the problem with over automating is it is one mistake that you've made that compounds like infinitely. And so I think like I'd be curious to know what your kind of approach is, because you're somebody who sees the value of automation as much as we can do to prevent people from doing robotic tasks and free them up to do the like person-to-person stuff that people got into home care for in the first place, but also that humans are uniquely good at. What's your kind of playbook for how to automate the stuff that should be automated without waking up and realizing that you've built like this crazy spaghetti net web of automations that are all interconnected and you're miserable?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, that might be different for every home care agency, because that's another thing, is they all kind of work a little bit differently. But, Zengage, I think does it very well, where these are the basics. These are the things that need to happen. So same thing with like other aspects of the business that can get kind of hairy with a lot of people doing things. Well, you can free them up to do it, right? And so some of those things that need to happen is there needs to be a really good automated follow-up process for prospects and caregivers. So when they call, you don't want to put... You don't want to put them in a spreadsheet, okay?
Right.
Just got back and did this audit. And I hear that all the time from other agencies. yeah, and it's so easy to fall into the trap of putting something into a spreadsheet. So, having just a simple process, doesn't have to be super complicated. From lead comes in, whether it's a referral or coming from the website, they go into you could have different sources. Let's say it's caregivers. You got Indeed, you got maybe LinkedIn, you got, maybe some Facebook groups or whatever, but they should all come into one pipeline and then have some nurturing text messaging, maybe some email, and then something that somebody in the office can that's one place that I got all these different sources, but it's here. And truthfully, spreadsheets they're not great at that. They can do it, but you're going to get way more value if you connect it to nurturing and stuff like that.
Yep. Makes a ton of sense. And so let's move to where we talk about something that is underrated. The industry typically overlooks it. It's maybe a little bit boring. It's maybe a little bit tedious, but you think it's actually really important.
Yeah. I would say Google reviews. I do a lot of audits looking at their SEO, home care agencies, and I see this time after time after time. They're typically not hitting above 40 reviews,
Okay.
And also, they're just not. So if you go to the range of like 100 or 170, it's going to be harder for other agencies to catch up, and they're likely to give up, around the 40 mark. So it's going to make you stand out, and it's going to pay dividends for you if you can work on your Google reviews, just getting more good Google reviews.
Yeah. And you talk a lot about SEO, and I think everybody is familiar with like what that word is, and they've heard it before. But I think it's this really complex algorithm that's constantly changing. But can you kind of speak to, like, if somebody's like, I've heard of SEO, and at this point I'm afraid to ask what it is because I've heard it so many times. Like, what's the 30-second download on what SEO is and why people should care about it?
Yeah. So SEO, search engine optimization, and essentially what it is, it's a process of taking your Google business listing, or not your Google business listing. Let's say it's organic outside the map pack. So, first you have to understand where you're going to show up on Google. So you've got your map listings 1, 2, 3, and then you can click on view more and it'll show more map listings. And then underneath that you have your organic. So SEO is basically the process. Let's say you're on the map listings and you're showing up at position 12. You're not on the front page for your main keyword. So it's the process of taking actions or certain steps to send the right signals to Google for them to consider you to rank higher. So some of that could be getting more Google reviews. That's a percentage, and it carries a certain weight in Google's eyes. Is it the only thing? No. If that was your only strategy for SEO, it can move the needle a little bit, but it's not going to move you from 12 to, number 1 or 2 on Google. It might move you from 12 to 11 or 10, but it's not going to get you to the front page. So things like that's movements, actions, that is search engine optimization. What's not SEO is tracking where you rank on Google. There's a lot of people that say that's SEO. Tracking your positions, where you rank on Google, is just rank tracking. That is not SEO, and it's a huge, it's in my opinion, it's fraud. Telling people, I'm doing SEO for you. Well, what are you doing? Well, here's where you rank. Well, that's just rank tracking.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the steps that people can actually take to impact where they show up when someone Googles home care near me.
Yeah.
In home care, caregiver near me, whatever, that you are increasing your likelihood that you're showing up 1, 2, or 3 in that, instead of, 16 or 17, where you're on the second page of Google where functionally you don't exist.
Right. Yep.
Cool. Okay. Let's talk now about the little mistake that you see home care owners make all the time. And if they quit, it would make their lives or their businesses like 10 times better.
Yeah. So, I tend to do the audits. You're probably doing audits on other things or helping out home care agencies over there. And at the end of the day, I'm doing audits for Google ads. I'm doing audits for SEO. And one of the things I see all the time on the Google ad side is they are choking their ad spend. So, and I've tried to always wonder, why is it always about the same ad budget, $500, $1,000. And I think I've come to the conclusion, I'm in the home care space. I go to a lot of home care events, and they sit at a table. They ask the next guy, what are you spending for Google ads? What are you doing? And what they need to be asking is, what are you doing to get qualified leads? Right.
Yeah.
And then go down from there. And because many times that $500 budget I'm just telling you, after I do a Google ad audit, we usually see 80% of Google ad budgets are wasted on just the wrong places. And so choking their ad spend budget too small.
Yep.
And then at that point, I just recommend, hey, don't run any Google ads. Use that money for something else. It's just not enough to move the needle.
Yeah. And so when you talk about, just playing that back, right? Someone's spending $500 a month on Google. It sounds like your opinion is, in general, that might be good for testing, but once you figure out what works, you need to really ratchet up the amount that you're spending because it's delivering a return. But I'm spending $500 a month, and your experience is people are typically wasting 80% of that. So it's as though I've got $100 a month that I'm actually using well. And so what are the steps that you would take, or you'd tell somebody to take that number from I'm wasting 80% of my ads to, I'm wasting 80% of my ad spend is actually, providing the right kinds of impact for my business?
Well, great question. So, I think every home care agency owner wants to grow. That's their goal. So then what works? Is it billboards? Everybody wants to increase, right? Get more caregivers, And so you do that for advertising. And one of the better ways is search. It's targeted marketing, right? So when somebody's looking for home care near me, you can pop up an ad and even geo-target that location of town to show that ad in. So it's great. At the end of the day, what makes campaigns on Google ads work well versus ones that are wasting 80% of their ad budget. So let's say your ad budget is $1,000. What they need to focus on is their keywords. They need to and there's two sides of that. What am I targeting? And then the keywords that I'm targeting, what got triggered on Google? And so usually they start up here and they never look at what got triggered, and that's called search terms. And you can go underneath a report in Google Ads and say, hey, what did people, I have home care near me is the trigger word, but there's different match types, broad match. And if you're listening to this and you're like, I don't know what he's talking, and you just like zoned out and your eyes crossed and you're like, I'm clicking off, right? I get it. Many times, you're not going to know this stuff. But for those of you that want to dig in, that's what I would look at is, what am I targeting? And then what triggered my ad? And then there's a bunch more stuff there, but usually right there is where they're wasting the majority of their budget, 80%.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, I want to go to a segment of the show. We talked a lot about the mistakes that you've made and you've seen other people make, but I like to end every episode on a high note. And so tell me about something that's happened lately in your business that you're really proud of.
Awesome. Yeah. So I just met with my team actually today before meeting with you, and they came in my office. And this is more on the search engine optimization side. We always test things that move the needle. And in Google's eyes, it's like picking up loose change when you're doing SEO. So know probably, and a lot of you listening probably know, oh, well, if I put some keywords on my website, or if I put the right title, I might rank a little bit better, right? So everything carries a little bit different weight. Well, we found something that consistently gets rankings, and it's about, let's say if you're picking up this change, it's like 25 cents, 35 cents, but it's good enough. It's like, dang, because most things that you do in the SEO world, it's like 5 cents here, 10 cents there, and you're trying to add that up to get movement. So this was like a big chunk. It's not the biggest chunk, but it's a good chunk. We're like, man, we're excited about that. So we've got that going, and we're going to implement that for our clients to see some big jumps or decent jumps in SEO rankings.
I'm not making so much money in my life that I wouldn't pick up a quarter if I saw it there.
Right?
I could pass by like some pennies or something. It's not really worth it, but finding a quarter seems like it's still worth picking up.
Right.
So, hey, I wanted to ask you about something. We didn't talk about this at all, but we've got a couple extra minutes here. There's a lot of, I think, questions when I talk to home care agencies about the ways that AI is going to impact this industry. Where you sit in the digital marketing world of SEO and pay-per-click and all the different kinds of ways people can show up online, how are you seeing AI impacting kind of that technology infrastructure as a whole? And then are you seeing any impacts on home care today or in the near future?
Great question. So I don't know how it's a loaded question, because as you might know,
let's see what happens.
There is a lot happening on AI every day. If you're following AI news, you can just see this happened, that, right? So one thing that's impacting home care agencies right now is I was talking to a client of ours, and he was on a program of ours. It was very light SEO, mostly on page, just on page SEO. And he was telling me they were all excited because they got a client that found them in ChatGPT.
Sure.
The client told them, we found you in ChatGPT. We searched in ChatGPT and we found you. And I was kind of surprised because that wasn't a goal of ours. Our goal was to create, content on the website that made sense for Google to digest it and then rank it, right, for search terms. Well, ChatGPT has a similar algorithm, apparently. Caught the website and by the way, we launched the website and this happened like 3 weeks later where that happened.
Yeah.
So it was pretty fast. Now, does that happening every day? I don't have data to back that. I'm just, this is from a conversation. But that, I think it's going to more and more going to happen because I don't know about you, but me, I'm using AI more and more to ask questions that are a little bit more sophisticated than a search so that I don't have to go to each website and form an opinion. I can have AI do that. So I think that's already impacting home care is clients and, in the future, more caregivers, replacing Google search more and more, basically. Yeah. Are we there yet? Totally no, but it's starting to uptick. I would say it's like the early days of Google, right?
Yeah. And I think for anybody listening to this who's like, I cannot imagine myself going into ChatGPT and asking it to help me with research on a topic like that and give me the links and I'll click the links and all that. But one of the things that I think is going to push people to do this more and more is every single search engine in Google is like this, provides the AI overview. And candidly, I think that that's a really low quality version of this kind of AI generated content. I think actually if you use a version of ChatGPT that's able to access the internet, you can actually get a much higher quality kind of summary and explanation. You can dialogue back and forth with it, and you can ask follow-up questions of the thing. And so I've definitely seen that. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, of course that's a way that AI is impacting this world, is because people are sharing on parts of Twitter that I'm on the screenshots of their referral links of this link source is OpenAI or ChatGPT or however that extension exists. So that's big. Anything else that's top of mind as it relates to how AI is impacting this industry?
Yeah. Another thing I would say is, compliance. I just came back from my business partner. Depending on if you're in home health or if you're in home care, there's still some aspects to home care that you don't want to be giving out medical advice, right? So one thing that we shifted is, we utilize AI for content, but we also gauge it. What's the percent? So we have a content rater that will look and it looks, is this AI? Is it not? Because Google, I don't think Google's going to do this because it would be like saying, well, our own Google product isn't good, but I would say don't forget your why you got in home care, because if you're just regurgitating AI content for social media, for your website, for Google Business Post, whatever, it's going to be just like everybody else. And if Google does slap the hammer, and they've been known to randomly slap hammers and you're hunky-dory getting calls, and then the next thing you know, you're like, why isn't my phone ringing, right? Well, you might have got slapped, right? So from Google. So I would be careful on just relying too heavily on AI generated content that you're not proofing. Maybe your in-house team is doing it. Make sure you have a process or something in place that either gets checked by you or somebody that has a license. If you do have to put out medical content, which we don't put out medical content or advice, because there's legal things that can put you at risk, right? And another thing that puts you at risk, just you don't want to tell people that, you prevent falls. You want to say fall assistance. You tell them on your website, fall prevention, well, what if they do fall? You're going to get sued. So stuff like that, but a lot of people didn't even think about that. But what if AI puts that out there and you're not checking your content and then somebody falls?
Yeah. And I think there's more than one reason to do that. There's kind of the liability piece of that, but there's also we're getting more sophisticated at identifying what I call AI slop, which is someone went into ChatGPT and they were like, hey, tell me about this thing. And we just take whatever it gives us and we're like, here you go. And I think people are rightly really like suspicious of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it also feels like, okay, you took 2 seconds to write these 400
Very
words.
Sophisticated
And now
sentence.
you're stealing a minute of my time in order for me to have to read this thing that you didn't even think about. I think there is kind of this risk of some backlash around some of this AI generated content where we're giving people chores to do, which is please read this AI generated stuff that I wrote. And so I think there's multiple reasons to do that, not least of which we are getting much more sophisticated at identifying when AI has written something and the person didn't really proofread it.
Yep.
Well, Jeremy, before we get out of here, what do you want to plug? How can people find you? What do you want the next action for people to take to be?
Cool. Yeah, if you're a home care agency or if you're in the senior care niche and you have some kind of service-based business and you're not sure where you rank on Google, by the way, if you're looking up where you rank on Google and you're standing in your office, that's probably the worst way. If you're typing in home care near me or senior care, Google's you're there, so you're gonna be number one on some of that stuff. The bad thing is if you do that and you're not finding yourself, then that's even a bigger problem. So anyway, but if you want to know where you rank, we have a ultimate home care marketing session. We audit your top 30 keywords you should be ranking for. We also do a Google ad audit. Let's say you're concerned you might be one of those accounts that's wasting 80%. It's called the Ultimate Home Care Marketing Session. It's free. You can go to growseniorcaremarketing.com, fill out that strategy session, and it's absolutely free. We'll audit both those things.
Awesome. Well, Jeremy, thanks so much for making the time to come on today. Really enjoyed our conversation.
Same here. Appreciate you.
On behalf of the team here at Zengage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there. It helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zengage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.